on LinkedIn because she puts so much good information out there. She's teaching us so much. So, hey, Dr. Bill, Dr. Holliday-Bell, good to see you. Oh, yep. Yeah, we got people in your background. So, all right. That's the,
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm
yeah.
excited to be on the show and talk to you more about sleep, one of my favorite subjects.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So what I want to do first, I'm going to play us in with my hard work intro that I put together specifically for you, and then I'm going to come in and I'm going to go hard. I'm going to ask you to start bragging about yourself. Let us know what you're all about. Okay.
All right, sounds good.
All right. All right. First off, can you see me backstage? I was just dancing. Did you see any of that?
I
Okay,
couldn't
good.
see you. I wish I could have.
Oh man, see, I'm really glad. I had to make sure I asked somebody because I'm doing this every show, and then I realized, wait a minute, I wonder if the person who's a guest can see. Okay, perfect. Um, so to get started, I want to make sure that we kind of get an idea of who you are, what you do, and what you're bringing to the table because you got lots of information. So this is the time. Can you tell us all about you?
Yeah. So I'm a board certified physician, actually a certified pediatrician by training. And I'm someone who has always loved sleep, had a deep, positive relationship with sleep. But as I went throughout medical training in particular, I started to suffer from insomnia, difficulty
Mm,
falling asleep, even when I had the time to sleep, although most of the time I didn't have the time to sleep.
yeah.
And just saw what significant toll it was taking on me in terms of my mental health, my physical health. So, I really just started on my own journey to fix my sleep and just be better at sleeping. And in that journey, I discovered that sleep was so much more than just feeling rested. It really
Hmm.
is so like integral to every facet of your optimal functioning. And so once I decided, started to discover that and fell in love with sleep all over again, I knew I had to help other people do the same. So I went on to become certified as a clinical sleep specialist. And since then, it actually started with a blog about sleep. And then I started my business, The Solution is Sleep. I do some one-on-one consulting
Hmm.
specifically with individuals who suffer from chronic insomnia. So I got
Sure.
certified in cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. I
Wow.
also do some corporate consulting on, the corporate level to say, hey, your workers need better sleep because it makes them better people, more productive, helps the
Hmm.
company's bottom line. So I worked with several corporations to do that. I contribute to a lot of online and print publications. I am on the advisory board for Health Magazine. I was on the advisory
Oh,
board
okay.
for Cash for Sleep. I've been on several TV shows, Dr. Phil's show, locally television shows, WGN television and ABC News. I'm currently working on my first book, so be on
Nice.
the lookout for that. And yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Oh wow. So you were getting it done.
Busy,
uh
very busy.
yeah, so the first place I want to dive in is a little bit about a place where I particularly am interested with corporate sleep. How does that work? Are you just like, hey, here's some information, company, get your people more sleep, or like what can they actually do to
Yeah,
help that?
it's a great question. So I've done it in a few different ways. So it really starts by assessing the needs of the corporation. I've
Mm,
had corporations come out, reach out to me and say, "Hey, we know that sleep is important. At a higher level, we want our workers to know that sleep is
yeah.
important because, you know, insufficient sleep leads to absenteeism, something called presenteeism, where you're there but you're not effective, you're not functional, you're not
Mm,
performing at your highest level. Increased costs to the employee in terms of healthcare. And then, of course, down the line, physical conditions,
yeah.
cardiovascular disease, type
Yeah.
2 diabetes, anxiety, depression. So it really affects the worker both at an individual and at a larger scale level for the company. So I've had companies who reach out to me like, we understand it's important. Can you help our employees understand that too? And then
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
give them some quick tips on like, this is how you improve sleep. Then I've had some corporations reach out to me and say, hey, we know it's important. Like now they know that, but they are actually struggling. Like we've done an assessment and we understand that
Ah,
they are not able to get the sleep that they know that they need. And so I do some deeper, like actual one-on-one consultations within the corporation for individuals
interesting.
who are suffering from sleep issues. So it runs the gamut to just like, hey, let me just tell you why this is important. This is how you can start. And then like, okay, you've already tried. This is more intensive, information on how to improve your sleep.
Wow. 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 That, when I read that you were doing corporate trainings with this, I had no idea. I was like, wait, how does that even show up? So thank you. That's good stuff. Um, let me take you back. Let me take you back a little bit because um you're obviously in a couple of groups that um some people would say under attack and at the very least a little marginalized. You're a
Sure.
black woman, you're a doctor, um, and by all rights I guess we would consider this success. What's the path to getting there? Because um, when we all think about it, it's like everyone would like to be a doctor or like to have their children be a doctor, something like that. But um, how was that journey? Because you're also a Chicagoan, right?
I am, yes.
Woohoo!
Chicago. Chicago. And actually, I'm born in Chicago, raised there most of my life, but just moved back to the area. So I left to live in DC for about 5 years for training and then came back recently.
Hmm.
But the journey has been interesting for me. So I'm from the inner city, urban Chicago, like city. And yeah, there's no, not many people that I grew up with that I knew that looked like me who were doctors or anything
Right.
even close to that. Very poor area, urban area. But I
Hmm.
feel that God put it in my heart to do this. Like I always knew. I actually made the decision when I was 6 that I was going to be a doctor. And I'm
Wow.
a baby doctor. And it's something that I just stuck with luckily throughout life.
Yeah. Yeah.
I definitely put myself in situations and experiences to confirm that decision that I made at such a young age. But I've always been the type of person that wanted to help people, and wanted to be there for people at their, most vulnerable
Yeah.
state.
Yeah.
And if there was something that I knew and I could do to help, I was all about it. My mom used to always say, if there was a kid on the playground who hurt themselves, you the first person to go grab the kid and like fix them up. And that's just always been me. So I think that, has led me to this journey into the field that I'm
It's
in today.
interesting.
And so similarly, when I, you know, found the answers to the sleep issue, I
Yeah.
couldn't keep it to myself. Like it was something that I was like, I have to share this because I know so many people struggle with this. And so I just think it's who I am. And I
Yeah.
love that I get to help people, on both levels, like the individual level as a physician, the more global level, especially what I do with like the corporate speaking and things like that.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really is just something I'm so passionate about. And so I just didn't let anything stop me from accomplishing it.
It's such an interesting thing hearing about your journey. And I know when we spoke before, we talked a little bit about the fact that that's just kind of in you. Like that's kind of that innate piece of you. Um, Obviously though, there are some people who are gonna go, I have this thing in me and simple enough. I can use it to make money. I can use it to do whatever. Or some people may just bury that skill, bury that gift, and just say, "I'm going to take care of myself." I want to jump inside of like your reasoning, like coming up and you see this. Was it family? Was it particular things that happened, or why did that thing get nurtured in you and grow in you, where you're like, man, not only am I a kid being this way, but I am actually moving toward this all throughout the other steps of my life.
Yeah, I think it was multifactorial for sure. Like, I think, again, this was something that was innate in me that God put into me and was like, you need to do this. So it was that passion that was there. Also, unfortunately and somewhat fortunately, I got to be with family members close to my father in particular in significant health struggles that
Okay.
he has had over the years, and got to have a close up view of what it meant to be a
Yeah.
patient
Yeah.
in the closest way possible without actually being the patient. So,
Yeah.
seeing what a difference a doctor makes in the life of an individual, of a
Yeah.
family, specifically an underrepresented minority family,
Yeah.
to me allow me to assume that responsibility in a way that was different than just being a doctor for the title or the money or procedure, whatever some other people may do it for. It was like I have a responsibility
Huh.
to care for people in the way that we have received care for people in the opposite way that we have received care
Yeah.
in some
Yeah.
instances, to advocate for people who don't have a voice,
Yep.
and who may not, be in the same position to have someone with the knowledge, right? I
Yeah.
think one of the things that I look back on in my life now is like, man, I'm so grateful that God put me in a position to be an advocate for my family.
Yeah.
Because even at this level, I think some people see, Black people who have health issues and assume that you don't, know any better, or assume
Yeah.
that you don't have anyone who
Anyone
kind of knows what
advocating
they're
for
talking
you.
about. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me to be that voice, oh my gosh, it's affected things significantly. And so I think that
Yeah.
that definitely adds to it. And then I like to be that for other people, for patients that I see, for little girl. I actually had a girl today in clinic, and the mom switched to where she was. Like I said, I just moved back to the area, and she immediately switched providers and was like, I looked you up and I
Yeah.
saw that you're a Black woman. And I said, my daughter needs to go to a Black woman. And just that comfortability and that
Yeah.
relatability that we had. So I think it's multifactorial. Like, it was something put in me. I feel like I got to be on the other side and see it from the side of a patient. My family was so important in nurturing that in me as well, and being like,
Yeah.
hey, you want
Yeah.
to do that? You absolutely can. Doesn't matter where we come from, how much money we have, like, you can achieve anything you want to. So I think all of
Love
those
that.
things together allow me to, be where I am today.
Whew. And you broke out the multifactorial. That's what, that's 6 syllables. You got me going here. Okay. Uh, so kind of moving in that direction, right? You're bringing up the idea of yeah, we have these marginalized groups. We understand that there are some things that aren't necessarily fair, aren't necessarily equaled out. When it comes to sleep, is it the same way? Like, is there any sort of disproportionate trends that happen with people of color?
Yeah, unfortunately, I just say, sleep is no different than the majority of chronic disorders or conditions
Sure.
that disproportionately affects minority communities. And there is a
Yeah.
sleep disparity in that, individuals of my minority descent, Black and Brown people, are less likely to get sufficient sleep, are less likely to get enough of the slow wave or deep sleep that is really restorative, and more likely to suffer from sleep disorders like obstructive sleep apnea, less likely to be diagnosed and treated for those
Wow.
disorders.
Wow.
And unfortunately, something like obstructive sleep apnea significantly increases your risk for obesity, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, all the same things that also disproportionately affect the Black community. And
Wow.
so, I think it's just a vicious cycle that unfortunately we get trapped in. And also, unfortunately, no one's really talking about that, right? Like, we know about the other disparities, no one's
Yeah.
talking about the
Yeah.
sleep disparity. And so that is something else that's also really important to me, to use my voice to illuminate
Mhm.
and hopefully start to create some change in that area.
D- um, Obviously you're familiar with this research, but is there some particular reasons why there's this disproportionate? Yeah, go ahead. Why is that?
Yeah. Again, also multifactorial. And I don't know that
Mhm.
we know all the answers. What we do know, though, it's research has shown that facing discrimination
Mm,
leads to worse sleep and decreased slow wave sleep. And so there have
mm.
been studies done that,
Wow.
followed individuals, brown, Black, otherwise, and assess whether or not they experience some level of discrimination, generally in the workplace, but also outside the workplace, at the
Mm,
microaggression level and at the
really?
macroaggression level. And it found that there was a statistically significant decrease in the amount of slow wave sleep received if the individual had received,
Wow.
face discrimination, whether at the micro or macro level. And of course, individuals of minority individuals were more likely to receive that discrimination. So it's
Wow.
so interesting because I think in a lot of ways, obviously we know that we face that, but it's something we kind of push to the back
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
our minds. Even if it's on a micro level, meaning that, consciously we're not even aware of how
Hmm.
it's impacting us at a deeper level,
Mm,
subconsciously, and can affect our sleep. Um, Certain things like, the types of jobs that you have, needing
yeah.
to
Yeah.
work odd hours, needing to work multiple jobs, income levels, stressors that come with that. have also contributed, but there have been
Yeah.
research that has controlled for those factors and have found that even at a similar socioeconomic status and
Wow.
similar type of job, minorities still tend
Still
to
there.
experience poor sleep.
Whew. Okay, man, you were just dropping, just come right in, dropping the bombs, huh? Let me ask you this: what's the solution? What's the solution now? I mean, not just for everyone, but particularly for people of color. Like, what's the solution to the sleep issues that we're facing?
I think the solution to most things starts with education.
Okay.
I think that knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And when we don't have that knowledge, we lose that power. And so just knowing that the disparity exists and knowing how important sleep is the first step to creating change.
Hmm.
And I think it's been a difficult task because as a society as a whole, we're just now starting to catch on
Yeah.
to how important sleep is, right? It's always been like, I'll sleep when I die, and you're lazy if you sleep. And now people are like, oh wait, hold on, you might actually die earlier if you
Right.
don't
Right.
sleep.
Yeah.
But this is just we're just starting to kind of turn that corner. And so it's gonna take even longer to communicate it to the more marginalized communities. But
Sure.
again, it's about speaking out, it's about spreading the word. It's about saying that you deserve to sleep. You're worthy of sleep. You don't have to
Yeah.
earn this. It's not a badge of honor to not be able to do this. Um, Luckily, what has had more of a revolution recently is just focusing on mental health
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
additional
Healthcare. Yeah.
stress that individuals are under that can lead to, worsening sleep. I think improving that will help overall. But I think at the end of the day, it starts with getting the issue out there, educating people, being a voice, and it coming from people who look like you, who care
Sure.
about,
Sure.
your outcomes, because I think people tend to listen more, when it's coming from someone similar to them.
Eh, Okay, so you're a Chicagoan. How many black female sleep specialists do you know?
So I know one other
Okay,
black
okay.
female sleep specialist for sure, who,
In the area or somewhere else.
no, not in the area. I don't know any in the area. I don't know in this area or DC where I don't know any. There's
Okay,
one other, like, I think, to be fair, the sleep community in general, in terms of the people who are outwardly, speaking about it and making content about it, is fairly small. And I think
gotcha. Okay,
a lot of us tend to kind of know each other. Of course, there are many sleep specialists,
sure,
but just
sure.
in more of the clinical aspect and not like I'm putting it out there, I'm creating content, I'm educating the masses. So there are not many of us, but there is another black female, which I'd love to see, and hopefully
Sure.
there will be more of us in black males too, and
Yeah,
kind
definitely.
of more of us popping up. Hopefully.
Yeah, okay. Well, so that puts a little bit of a drawback on the idea of educating people by people who look like us because it's going to be maybe a little bit of time to get that in.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, so on a little bit of a wider scale, one of the things that I love about your content is that you're always kind of busting these myths. You just mentioned things like "I'll sleep when I'm dead," and people feeling like, "Oh, well, you're lazy," or you're some sort of. There's almost like a moral correlation with if you go to sleep. And I know personally, I am that guy. Like I look at taking naps like eating out the garbage. Like it's just, oh God, how could you, And I feel that. So let me ask you. Give us a couple of things that we in general we think is the case but really isn't true about sleep.
Yeah, so I would say sleep is a luxury, right? So I think a
Yeah.
lot of people look at it like, oh, it's lazy, like you said, eating out of the trash. I
Yeah.
think sleep is a lobster and steak meal with 5, 6 courses, and you get your dessert, right? Because a lot of individuals who have to work harder or work multiple jobs or work odd hours or have a lot of people to take care of don't
Yeah.
have that luxury of sleep, right? They don't have this excessive amount of time to spend
Yeah.
sleeping or to spend napping. So unfortunately, I think it has been looked at as a luxury. I try to make people understand that like it's a luxury you can afford, even if you think that you can't. There are ways to make it more affordable and accessible to you. But
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think it's actually been much more of a luxury. But I would say the first thing that I think that I see a lot in terms of myths is that everyone needs 7 to 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I have talked to people, even who come to me who struggle with sleep problems, like, I get 7 hours and I'm still tired. And I'm like, okay, have you ever tried to get 9 hours? It's like, no, because like you just need seven. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
maybe you need nine. And No one ever thinks of it like that, right? I need
Right.
9 hours of sleep. After 7 hours, I'm tired. I'm not
Hmm.
functioning optimally. I don't feel good. It's not like 8.5 is like functional to me. 9 is optimal.
Hmm.
But if I went by the whole 7 to 8 hours, I would always be
I'm
functioning at
tired.
a suboptimal level and not
Sure.
understand why. So I think people understanding what their sleep need is, like I always say, you have to know where you're going in order to find out how to get there. So if
Yeah,
your
definitely.
destination is incorrect, it doesn't matter how you get there, how quickly, whatever it takes you to get there, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
So starting out with understanding what your need is, understanding that that's different for every individual is going to be key to your optimal functioning.
Interesting. Interesting. I do think that that's a very interesting piece because I like to think of myself as a pretty smart guy who's always reaching out, asking questions, looking for information. I've never thought to even ask that. I've never thought to ask like what would be my optimal amount of time to sleep. How does someone find that out? Like
That's a
what do
great
they do?
question. So the most luxurious way of doing this, and the way that I think everyone in life at some point should do, is do something called taking a sleepcation. I call it. So
Mm,
a time period where you have a week or two off of work duties, ideally off of significant parenting duties. If your kids are older, fine.
mhm,
And you use it as a time to get to know yourself and get to know your sleep.
mm,
So the goal is to allow your body to fall asleep naturally and allow your body to wake up naturally, right? Like what we were meant to do, like without
mhm,
alarm clocks, without artificial lights or anything like that, without other substances. You fall asleep, you wake up naturally. There are actually hotels that have packages around this,
mm,
and it's literally for sleep. They have the blackout curtains, they have the sound machines, all these things to help you sleep. And it does a couple of things. So the first few days, you're definitely sleeping off what we call sleep debt. So if you're someone who's chronically underslept, as soon as you allow your body the time to sleep, you're most likely your body's like, okay, we need to catch up on this.
yeah,
But after
sure.
a few days, you fall into your natural rhythm.
Mhm.
And the time that you would naturally fall asleep and the time that you naturally wake up usually will be the same after some time. That kind of gives you an idea of what your body needs. It also gives you an idea of what your chronotype is, what your circadian tendency is.
Mm,
So what I mean by that is I'm a night owl. If I allow my body to naturally go to sleep whenever it felt the need to and wake up, it would probably be somewhere around 12, like midnight to 9 a.m. would be a perfect schedule for me. Unfortunately, life is not set up that way, and I
I
can't
was
I
gonna
can't
say,
live my
right?
life according to that. But the closer I live my life to that, the more optimally I function. So
Ah,
you get an idea of what your body wants to do, and then you can try to set up real life to look more similar to that. Of course, not everyone has the luxury of being able to do that, so it's really can just be about trial and error. If you sleep for 7 hours and you're not well rested, try 8 hours. If that's not working, try 9. Like it's gonna be some trial and error to get to the right spot for you.
wow. Okay. Okay. Look, I got to tell you, that's that part is great. Is there anything? Because I'm going to tell you, I don't have enough vacation hours up for this, right? So, is there a version of this that I can be doing at home, or do I just need to try to figure out that time to kind of figure out my chronotype?
Yeah, no, you definitely can do it at home. I mean, even, like I said, the part that makes it a little more difficult is the sleep debt that so many people have that you're
Yeah. Yeah.
gonna be, struggling. Even a long weekend can make it difficult to really find out what that is. But if you prioritize sleep, even during the week, you can say, okay, let me try 8 hours tonight and see what that feels like. There is, and I think this is controversial, so there's not enough information on it to really speak to it, but there is a such thing as sleeping too much, quote unquote. I really don't like
Okay.
that, but for lack of a better term, where you sleep a long time and you feel this kind of disorientation, this
Huh.
sleep inertia, we call it. So you have to find what that sweet spot is, right? If you like, I could probably sleep much longer than I do, but I know that sleeping sleeping a little bit longer makes me feel a little bit worse. Sleeping 9 hours, I feel excellent. Sleeping less than that, I feel a little less great. So you can try some trial and error at home to get to a good spot. You won't necessarily get that idea of your circadian tendency because if you have to
The
wake
sleep
up
debt.
early for work,
Yeah.
it's not going to be the same. But often people know that, like, yeah, if I didn't have to go to sleep this early, I wouldn't naturally be sleepy, this
Okay.
early. So you can kind of figure that out in other ways.
Are there certain people who can get away with 5 hours of sleep a night and live healthy lives?
That's a great question. far less than what people think.
I
So,
imagine, yeah.
so many people say, and to be fair, when we think healthy, there's so many things that factor into your
Yeah, yeah.
health status. So I'm not going to say you're going to be this completely unhealthy person if you're not getting enough sleep. What I can say is that you will not be functioning optimally if you're not getting enough sleep. And I can emphatically state that no matter who you are.
Yeah.
So what I often hear people say is, oh yeah, I can get by on 5 hours of sleep. I can get by on 6 hours of sleep. Like, excellent. Are you functioning optimally though? Getting by and
Yeah.
functioning optimally are two completely different things. I can get by on less sleep as well, but am I as mentally sharp? Am I as alert? Is my memory as good? Is my reaction time as good? Is my
Mm,
mood as great as if I get 9 hours? Absolutely not. And would I rather exist in life just getting by with those things at a
sure,
suboptimal level,
sure.
or would I rather exist it as optimally as possible in I choose the latter as optimally as possible.
Definitely, yeah.
And even if you're overall a healthy person, in the background, you are still dealing with the negative effects of insufficient sleep, like the cortisol release that leads to increased inflammation, that leads to weakening of your
Uh-huh.
blood vessels and cardiovascular and all of those. So we can't always necessarily pinpoint and say, because you didn't get enough sleep, this is exactly why, but
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
absolutely contributing to it. So no, there are genetically short sleepers who can function optimally off of about 6 hours of sleep. Less than that is almost 0%. But
Okay.
it's like 0.001% of the population, like much less than what people may think.
Yeah, because everybody I know, oh, I'm good. Give me 4 or 5 hours of sleep. I'm okay. But that's good to know. So, okay, you mentioned some of the effects that you're having, that you're getting, the consequences of insufficient sleep. Can you kind of speak to those a little bit? Because what I'd like to do is have the audience kind of understand what it looks like, or what they can look for to recognize if they're getting insufficient sleep.
Oh, sure. So I would say the immediate effects are morning headache. So if you're waking up every morning with a headache, that could be a sign you're not getting enough sleep. The
Hmm.
grogginess, the mental fog. If you're needing a cup of coffee just to get going every single day,
Sure.
like coffee is a stimulant and it can be used to enhance certain things. But if you're needing that to get through the day, you're probably not getting enough sleep.
So we
Um,
agree that coffee is the devil. That's
no, I love coffee. Coffee is
no,
actually
no.
a good
Well,
in my
you were
life.
already on my side. I heard you. You agreed. Now
I
my
love
wife is gonna
coffee,
be like,
but
"Oh, you and Dr. Holliday-Bell."
no, I actually love coffee. It does not wake me up, unfortunately and
Mm,
fortunately. I think I'm a fast metabolizer of caffeine, so I love
gotcha.
it simply for the taste.
Oh,
Um, but yeah, on a more molecular microscopic level, when you don't get enough sleep, it sends your body into a state of stress. Your fight or flight response gets turned on because your
interesting.
body's like, if we're not taking part in this most restorative process that we should be doing for at least a third of our
Yeah.
lives, there must be
Yeah,
something
we
going
must
on. So
yeah,
let
must be
me
some
increase.
danger.
Yes, there must be
Interesting.
danger. So let me get things going. Let's make sure we're alert. Let's increase our cortisol level because we need to get ready to fight whatever's causing us not to get enough sleep.
Wow.
And the problem is, if you are existing in that
Yeah.
constantly, that leads to constant inflammation and an overstress, overdrive of your
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
And that inflammation, widespread inflammation, is bad for every part of your body. It's going to
Hmm.
lead to
Hmm.
inflammation of your blood vessels, weakening of your blood vessels, lead to high
Wow.
blood pressure, cardiovascular disease. Cortisol decreases your sensitivity to insulin, so it leads to increased risk of type 2 diabetes.
Wow.
You literally eat more. So the hunger hormone ghrelin is released in higher quantities when you're not getting enough sleep, and the full hormone leptin is released in lower quantities. So you're more
Hmm.
likely to eat, you're more likely to make poor food choices. You're less likely to be active because your body's trying to conserve the energy. Because what if we have to fight? We need to
That's right. Yeah.
maintain, vigilance for that. So it leads to your increased risk of obesity and all of these downstream effects. So not only do you just like not
Wow.
feel great, anyone who, after a poor night of sleep, you're more irritable. Everything is on your nerves. Like you just don't feel good, in addition to the actual physical consequences of
Jeez. First off, let me stop and just. Do you have a name for the book already? Do you have your title,
it. I
or
do.
can we
It
hear it, or can you tell
is.
us?
It's called Sleeping on the Job: How to Promote Yourself Through Work and Life Through Better Sleep.
Look, when you finish this book, you got to come back on, because this I'm a nerd, and hearing how all of these systems work together for me is like such a fascinating thing. And maybe it's just the idea that we have so much more control over the things that are affecting us that we think.
Yeah.
But I am fascinated by the fact that there's so much of this stuff that goes together. Um, you mentioned, geez, what was it? You mentioned, um, darn it, now it's just slipping my mind.
Mhm.
Fine. One of the things that I wanted to make sure I brought up with you is this idea of like next steps. So I know we talked a little bit about the fact that yeah, we can do some of our own testing. If I'm going to my primary doctor, what do I tell them to get them on the road to figuring out what's going on with me and my sleep and how that fits to the my health equation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will start by saying, and I can say this as a primary doctor, unfortunately, we drop the ball in addressing sleep. And I think
Sure.
it's because we don't have a lot of training on it traditionally. So the
Yeah.
reason that I went on to get certified as a sleep specialist is because we get some training, but we don't get specific training on how to address
Sure.
sleep. And to be fair to primary doctors, there's so many things you're trying to address in a
Yeah.
visit that it
Yeah.
is difficult. And when you feel like you don't even have the answers, it's a difficult subject to broach. However, I like to empower patients to say that's not a reason not to bring it up.
Okay.
And oftentimes your doctor won't bring it up because there are so many things to cover. So it's first about just saying, hey, I'm not sleeping well. Period. I'm not sleeping well. Is there anything you can do to help me with this? And some doctors actually I've seen are great if the subject is broached. They're able to give you some techniques and strategies. But if not, there are sleep medicine physicians who specialize in sleep who can definitely
Ah,
help you. Or, a sleep specialist like myself, behavioral sleep specialist, there are people who can help, but you're less likely to get that help if you don't bring it up. So I
yeah.
would first start by saying, I'm not getting enough sleep.
Ask the question. Okay.
Most good physicians will delve into that at least a little bit deeper and screen for sleep disorders that significantly increase your risk of all those things. So, like obstructive sleep apnea is one easy.
Sure.
Are you snoring at night? Do you wake up morning headaches? Are you unrefreshed no matter how much sleep you get? Do you take pauses in your breathing? Has anyone ever told? Like that's easy to do,
Yeah.
easy to diagnose via sleep study, and then go on to get further treatment. So,
Sure.
sometimes it's not always 100%, but if you're someone who's had difficult to control high blood pressure, we're throwing medications at you, and then you're like, hey, doc, I'm actually not sleeping at night. And oh, yeah, I do snore at night. That's easy to put those puzzle pieces together. So it really
Absolutely.
just starts by speaking up. I used to tell people, if you were to break your leg today, you're not gonna like, well, I'm just gonna deal with this broken leg. I just got things to do. You would go to the doctor and get you care for your broken leg. So
That's
don't
right.
don't not get care for your broken sleep. Like that should deserve the same amount of attention. So go to your primary provider, let them know there's an issue, and then you can discuss how to move forward from.
Oof. Okay, so now what about some of the stuff that I know a lot of people are doing, like melatonin, things like that? Are those effective? Are they helpful? Are they not helpful? What are you thinking?
I would say it depends. For the most part, melatonin is not gonna fix most sleep issues.
Okay.
With the asterisk that if you have a sleep issue that throws off your circadian rhythm, melatonin can be helpful because that is what melatonin is for. Melatonin is a signal to your brain and your body and your circadian rhythm that it's time to set the stage for sleep.
Okay.
Because we take it in such high quantities, it can also be inducing to sleep, but that's not really the role of it. It's to set the stage, is to say, hey,
Mm,
let's start to decrease our body temperature, let's start to slow our brain waves down, let's get ready for sleep.
sure.
So I think in some instances with like jet lag, it can be super helpful. I believe if you have if your chronotype leans more towards the night owl, it's
Hmm.
helpful in the short term to kind of pull your circadian rhythm back earlier, but not to
Yeah.
be used long term, right? Like it's like a tool to help you get there, but then the other behavioral sleep strategies are what are going to be the most helpful to keep you there. So I think there's a role for it. I just think not in the way that most people tend to use it.
Okay, now let me ask. I know that I've heard people say like I'll have a glass of wine before I go to sleep or something like that. How effective are some of these other tools? Well, first off, can you tell us what some of these other tools that you've seen people use for trying to get a good night's sleep and how effective they are or
Yeah.
ineffective?
Yeah, a glass of wine is a great one. A great example of a poor one.
Yeah,
So I don't mean to agree. A great example of what people do that they shouldn't do. So um, a lot of people will use wine or alcohol, whatever, as a nightcap.
yeah.
And it seems to make sense on the surface because it is initially sedating.
That's
So
right.
you
Yeah.
drink a glass of wine or some other alcohol, you may find that you are sleepy at first. The problem is that it's metabolized pretty quickly, usually within 3 to 4 hours. And after it's metabolized, it becomes activating or stimulating. So you may
Hmm.
also find that after you drink a glass of wine or alcohol before bed, that you are more likely to have broken sleep. Oftentimes people don't put that together, so they think like, oh man, my sleep was obsessed, so I'll have another glass of wine tonight to help me fall asleep, but not realizing that might actually be the issue for the cause of the sleep issues. So you actually want to
Right.
avoid alcohol before bedtime, really within 3 to 4 hours, so that it's metabolized fully before you even go to bed, and that way you're not having as broken sleep. I
Hmm.
think the biggest thing I see that I do not like is the use of the over the counter sleep medications like ZQuil
Yeah. Yeah.
or something like that, that really at its core contains like Benadryl or diphenhydramine is the
Sure.
other name of it. Certainly it makes you drowsy, but it does not, similar to a lot of prescription sleep medications, not every single one of them, most of them do not recreate the natural architecture of sleep. So you think about
Okay.
sleep, we go through these, specific type of sleep stages, each having its own function, different amounts depending on whether it's beginning of the night, the second part of the night. And a lot of these medications just knock you out. They sedate
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
but you're not getting that same refreshing type of sleep. So a lot of people will say, well, yeah, I slept, but I also don't feel great. Like I don't feel that
Yeah.
same kind of energy, alertness, clarity, all those other things I do when I get good sleep. And so to me, you're putting a band-aid on something, but you're not fixing the actual problem. So I would say that's probably the thing I see the most. If people like turn into those types of medications that are
Sure.
not really meant to give you the sleep structure that you're looking for.
Let me ask you this. I've man, I've been sick and I've taken NyQuil, and it has been so tough to wake up the next morning. Which just made me think now, how should you feel in the morning? Like, how do you know that you actually got a good night's sleep?
That's great. In an ideal world, when you're allowing your body to just sleep in the way that it needs to, you shouldn't even really need an alarm to wake up. Like you should be waking up on your own as you naturally progress into the lighter stages of sleep. And because
Hmm.
you slept off most of your sleep debt, your body's like, I don't need to sleep anymore. We're going to wake up. I understand life is not like that. Not for me either, because I'm not naturally tending to wake up at the time that I have to.
Sure.
But being initially kind of groggy, tired is okay, but within the first like 10 to 15 minutes, that should really go away. You should be energetic, you should be alert. You should be able to sustain your energy and functioning throughout the day without needing some type of supplement like caffeine or other source of
Gotcha.
energy
Gotcha.
without falling asleep. So it really is just a good amount of energy, a good amount of mental alertness without feeling sleepy, tired, or needing supplement to help you stay awake.
Interesting. Because see, my wife told me that I get up in like 5 minutes after I'm up, I'm singing, I'm doing like I'm pretty hyped up. She told me it was my ADHD, but now again, we agree on coffee being really bad and the
I didn't say
ADHD.
that.
We're
Yeah.
just I'm gonna look as long as she's not watching, I'm gonna say you said it. So, okay. I'm not above lying to her. It's okay. So okay, is uh, kind of alone. Oh, I had one more I wanted to double check with you. I've heard two different things on exercise before bed. I've heard that it stimulates you. You shouldn't do it. I heard that it tires you out and it should do it. What's the official word?
So, it depends. Everybody is a
Okay.
little bit different. I
Okay.
can speak to what research has found in general is
Hmm.
that to start with, any kind of exercise daily is beneficial for sleep, period. Sleep
Okay.
or
Okay.
exercise has been shown to increase your amount of the deep, slow wave sleep, which is restorative for the body. So, period, exercise daily is great. What happens for a lot of people, though, if they exercise too close to bedtime, number one, exercise can release the catecholamines uh, like adrenaline and endorphins that can be too stimulating. So
Sure.
some people, like for instance, will say, "Oh, when they go on a run, they have the runner's high," and things like that. That is not really conducive to sleep, so it can be too stimulating. In addition, it can increase the body temperature too high for too long, and so your body temperature has to drop to facilitate the transition to sleep.
Okay.
And so if it's too high because of all the extra, energy your muscles are producing from working out, it can make it harder to fall asleep. With that being said, for some people, like myself, I sleep the best that I ever do
Yes.
after I work out. And it absolutely contributes and adds to my sleep. So everybody's a little bit different. There are some
Okay.
generalities, generally speaking, they say not to do it, but I always recommend trying it out for you. If you're
Okay.
someone who can work out and then you sleep just fine and you prefer to work out at night. If you work out and then you realize that you're having a hard time falling asleep, try to move that to a different part of the day.
Darn. Okay. So look, we're at about 40 minutes. I know you
Yeah, I
said
do
you
have
may
to hop
have
off
to wrap.
soon.
Let me ask one more that I forgot to get into. TV, computer screens, that sort of thing. I feel like we've heard for years that those are not conducive to good sleep. Is that the case, or does watching a little TV hurt that bad before you go to sleep? Can you tell us what you think there?
Yeah, so it is true that the what I try to get people to think about is not even necessarily just electronics or TV or whatever. Light
Hmm.
is not conducive to sleep. So
Sure.
whether that's your overhead lights, that's a light from your computer screen, your television, light is a signal to your brain that it's time to be awake and alert.
Gotcha.
We developed to align ourselves with the sun and with natural light. So naturally,
Hmm.
when the sun came up, that was our brain signal that it's time to get up, be active. And as the sun went down, that actually the darkness triggers our melatonin release. The
Hmm.
reason that in particular screens from computers, tablets, phones tend to get a bad rap is because the wavelength of light, right? Like light is made up of several wavelengths. The wavelength of light that is most alerting is a blue wavelength, which tends to be emitted at higher levels from these things. So
Hmm.
I am actually a big proponent of not only limiting screen time before bed, but like dimming the lights, using bedside lamps, like decreasing your light emission as much as possible, because whether you're aware of it or not, whenever you're exposing yourself to that, that is really sending a signal to your brain to say,
To get up.
oh, it's time to be up, awake, and
Yeah.
alert. And even if you are able to fall asleep, you're less likely to get into as deep of a stage of sleep as you would if you weren't exposing yourself to that light.
Whew. Alrighty. Wow. Look, there was so much information here. I'm gonna go ahead and cap us now because I know you have to run. Thank you so much, Doc. Thank you so much for all the information, for sharing some time with us today. Can you tell our audience where they can find you if they want to reach out?
Yeah, first of all, thank you again for having me.
Oh
As
yeah.
you can see, I love anytime I can talk
Yeah.
about sleep. I'm all for it. So, right on LinkedIn is a great place to find me. I try to put out, good free content, tips and tricks about sleep. I can be a little more like long form and long winded here than I can
Sure.
on some of my other social media platforms. So, here is a perfect place. My website, thesolutionissleep.com. I have a blog on my website. My consultation packages are there, so if you just want to look up more information about sleep or about me or about what I offer, that's a great place to go. I also have a freebie, a free 7-day guide to better sleep. If you want to check that out, you can sign up for that on my website. And then also my social media, my other main platform is Instagram. I'm a
Mhm.
little more short, entertaining. I like to call myself a sleep fluencer on there. So I try to provide
I
good,
like
valuable
it.
information, but in a bite-sized, more entertaining way.
Dr. Angela Holliday-Bell, you all. Boy, I wish we had other people in here who can clap because this was awesome. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sis. I will go ahead and play us off with my short outro and hold on for 2 seconds backstage, and I'll be right there.